Then on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 8 matchup between the Ole Miss Rebels and the LSU Tigers. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 8. You got Ole Miss, who is 7-0 on the season heading into this matchup. They're still undefeated heading into Week 8, and they're looking more and more like a college football playoff contender as the weeks go by, but they're taking on LSU this week, who is a 5-2 team. Despite being unranked, they're one of the top teams in the SEC right now, so should make for a great matchup. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this match for today, starting with your team trends. Ole Miss beat Auburn 48-34 in their Week 7 matchup, so overall a solid win for Ole Miss over a struggling Auburn team, but they still, thing is about Ole Miss here is they allowed 34 points in that game to a very poor Auburn offense. But nonetheless, this team they've won their games and they're 7-0, so that's what really matters in the end. And LSU, they just beat Florida on the road 45-35. Really good win there for LSU, going on the road to a tough place to play and getting the win there. And once again, they're 5-2 on the season, and this team is unranked right now, but I would consider LSU to be a potential top 25 team right now. In fact, I got LSU ranked as number 25 in my Week 8 rankings. I think LSU is very much worthy of potentially being ranked this week. Just to put it in perspective, LSU is not a bad football team. This team is good. Game's going to be on Saturday, October 22nd in Baton Rouge. So LSU's the home team for this one. Your kickoff is 2:30 p.m. Central. Spread's going LSU by 1.5, so just about as close as it gets. But this is kind of a rare thing here. You got Ole Miss, who's ranked 7th in the nation right now. They're 7-0, and they're playing LSU, who is a 2-loss unranked team. Yet LSU is still favored in this matchup according to the spread by 1.5. So, I mean, that just goes to show. I mean, LSU is a team that maybe has underachieved a bit this season, while Ole Miss potentially has overachieved a bit. That's just what the spread's saying. And I mean, it makes a little sense if you look into it with a bit more depth. Ole Miss has played a few close games that shouldn't have been close games, but I mean, once again, what really matters is that the Rebels are 7-0, and this team is still very much a big contender in the SEC right now. I mean, this team is in the lead in the SEC West right now. I mean, this team is they control their own destiny to win the West Division right now. So, I mean, it's obviously a huge matchup here for Ole Miss, and LSU isn't far behind either. I mean, they're tied with Alabama right now at 3-1 in the West Division, so it's something to keep in mind here. Series history, LSU leads at 66-41. Ole Miss won the last matchup, but LSU's won 7 out of the past 10. The FPI is also going with LSU 51.1%, and your over-under is 66.5. Stat comparison for this one, Ole Miss is 18th in points per game and points allowed, so they're pretty consistent on offense and defense. They're 79th in pass yards a game, 2nd in rush yards a game. This is a really talented backfield and rushing core that you got here in Ole Miss. And for yards allowed, they're 40th in passing, 64th in rushing. So once again, not a bad defense here in Ole Miss. They're allowing 17 points a game, and they're averaging getting 40 on the other side of that. And as for LSU, they're 60th in points per game, 27th in points allowed. They're 48th in pass yards a game, 49th in rush yards a game, and then for yards allowed, 39th in passing, 48th in rushing. So you got a strong defensive team here in LSU, allowing 21 points a game, which isn't all that bad, and they're averaging just about 34, which also isn't terrible, but at the same time, if you want to win the SEC, you're going to have to score more than 33 points against some opponents. Your recent matchups, Ole Miss, they beat Auburn 48-34. They beat Vanderbilt the week before 52-28. And something I've noticed about Ole Miss is this is a team that manages to pull away in the second half. They manage to get the win in the end, but oftentimes they play close games at first. They don't start terribly fast, and that's something that could come back to bite, especially when Ole Miss down the road is having to play outstanding teams like, I mean, they got Alabama in a few weeks, and they also have to play, I mean, you got Texas A&M on the road, who is a decent football team. That's actually coming up next week, Mississippi State. So, I mean, this is going to be the toughest stretch of the season for sure for Ole Miss. They've played one ranked team to date, and that was Kentucky back on October 1st. And now over the next 5 games, I think we're going to learn a lot about Ole Miss as they play their toughest stretch of the season for sure. But they beat Vanderbilt 52-28. They beat Kentucky 22-19. Obviously, that's the signature win of the season so far for the Rebels. They beat Tulsa 35-27, one of those closer games that shouldn't have been there. And they dominated Georgia Tech 42-0. So, I mean, you can kind of see that inconsistency there. They completely dominated Georgia Tech, who is an improved team off of last season. They're still not good, but that's an improved team off of at least 2021. And then close game to Tulsa. You beat Kentucky the next week, which was a huge win. And you could consider that Auburn win to kind of be a sloppy one there, allowing 34 points to, once again, just a poor Auburn team. Auburn is not a good football team this season. LSU, they beat Florida 45-35, lost to Tennessee 13-40 the previous week, and obviously Tennessee just beat Alabama. So that's a really good Vols football team there. Beat Auburn 21-17, close game there. They beat New Mexico 30-0, and also beat Mississippi State 31-16, which turns out to be a pretty solid win there, considering Mississippi State is also one of the top teams in the SEC right now. Your key points for this one: Ole Miss 7-0. This team is undefeated, but they obviously got a tough road ahead. This is, once again, the toughest stretch of the season for sure for Ole Miss coming up here, and they've been, once again, excellent in the rushing game, to say the least. This is a very strong team in the rushing game. Of course, you got Quinshon Judkins, who is the top rusher on this team with over 700 yards so far this season. That's an average of over 100 yards a game with 10 touchdowns on the season, so keep an eye on him. And they're currently the leaders of the SEC West. Once again, this team controls their own destiny. I mean, the road gets tougher down the stretch, but, I mean, this team does, once again, I mean, they're in the pole position to win the West right now. And, I mean, this team is very much worthy of being in the college football playoff conversation as of this week. And as for LSU, this team is still great. Despite being unranked, I do want to stress that here, is that LSU, despite being unranked, they are a good football team. And Jaden Daniels has generally been really good this season. Of course, the Arizona State transfer quarterback, he's been good for this team this season, putting up nearly 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, only one interception on the season through 7 games. That's something that is definitely worthy of being praised there. And he's also the lead rusher on this team with over 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he is a dual-threat quarterback who definitely has got some tremendous talent. And LSU, they got the home field advantage too. Can't forget about that. And this is a big opportunity here for LSU to take down a 7th-ranked Ole Miss team that is ranked really highly right now, but LSU being 5-2. I mean, this team is, Tigers are still worthy of making a run for that West Division. I mean, it is within reach for LSU here. I mean, honestly, I'd probably obviously still favor Alabama to win that division right now, but LSU is in a position where they could still make a run for it and win that division. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Ole Miss and LSU coming up here in Week 8 of action. And I'm going to go with LSU here. 35-31 is my predicted final score. I just feel like LSU, this is a time where LSU can get a really good win, and this is an awesome opportunity for a Tiger team that I think is, despite, once again, being unranked, this is one of the top teams in the SEC right now. They're playing really well. They just beat Florida last week convincingly, and they come back the next week. They play a really good football team in Ole Miss, and I feel like Ole Miss, despite being 7-0, I just don't know if they're as good as that record shows right now, just based on a few of their performances. And I think LSU starts fast, and they get a couple of touchdowns up on Ole Miss early, and from there, Rebels just can't catch up, and LSU gets the win 35-31. I still expect it to be a close game. I just think LSU leads for the majority of this thing, and in the end, they pull out a really good win that would place the Tigers at 6-2 and in a pretty good position in the West Division. But so I'll say 55% towards LSU. So I think it's going to be a close game. Once again, could go either way. Ole Miss is still a really talented team. I think is worthy of winning this game here. But over under 66.5, I'll take the under for this one, and LSU to cover the spread in the end, which is currently 1.5 towards the Tigers right now. But that said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.